Back then, I was just a quiet kid with a notebook. They tore it up, mocked my words, and turned me into a joke. I didn't fight back. I took notes. Years later, I published everything they did, every cruel moment, every name. Funny how the story changes when I'm the one holding the pen. Back in high school, I was the weird kid. Not in a cool, mysterious way, just awkward, quiet, and always with my nose buried in a notebook. I didn't have the best clothes, didn't go to parties, and definitely didn't know how to talk to people. But I knew how to write. That was my thing. While other kids were chasing touchdowns, crushes, or clout, I was creating entire universes with nothing but a pen and a beat-up spiral notebook. Writing was my escape. When the real world was loud and cruel, my stories were quiet and kind. I wrote about heroes who felt out of place, about worlds where the overlooked became the powerful. It was the only thing that made me feel seen, even if no one else was looking. That changed during junior year. It was fourth period lunch. I just finished a new chapter of my ongoing fantasy series. It was about a misunderstood knight who wore rusted armor but carried a sword that could cut through lies. Yeah, I know, dramatic, but I was proud of it. I got up to grab a bottle of juice. I should have taken my notebook with me. When I came back, the table was surrounded. Jake had it open. Brielle was already laughing before he even started reading. Marcus was hyping them up, yelling, "Story time, everybody, story time." Jake cleared his throat and began reading my story in a mocking, theatrical voice, overpronouncing every word and adding dumb sound effects. Brielle screamed, laughing at a heartfelt scene I had written the night before, one I stayed up past midnight to finish. Marcus pretended to faint from laughter and yelled, "Yo, this dude really thinks he's Harry Potter's cousin or something." Everyone turned to look. Phones were out. People were recording. Some kids laughed. Others just watched, unsure what to do. I stood frozen. I wanted to grab the notebook and run. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was walk up to them slowly and reach for it. Jake pulled it back, smirking. "You write this sad little fantasy trash every day? No wonder you sit alone." The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were original, they weren't, but because deep down, they confirmed everything I feared people thought about me. Eventually, a teacher walked by. Not to break it up, but to say, "All right, kids, let's quiet down. This isn't open mic day." Then she looked at me and added, "Maybe next time, keep your hobbies private if you don't want the attention." Yeah, that happened. After that day, everything changed. My locker was covered in sticky notes with fake book titles. The Chronicles of Cringe, Lord of the Nerds, 50 Shades of Sad. Someone even photoshopped my face onto a dragon and printed out posters that said, "Beware, Dungeon Dweller ahead." I became a walking meme. Teachers didn't step in. A few classmates said they felt bad, but they laughed too. And when I started skipping lunch, eating in the library or behind the gym, nobody asked why. I stopped writing. I stopped bringing my notebook. I stopped talking, honestly. My world shrank down to 3 things: get to class, keep my head down, and get through the day. But something strange happened. While I stopped writing stories, I started observing more. I took mental notes of how people moved, talked, whispered. I noticed how Jake got louder when teachers were around, how Brielle smiled sweetly at adults but turned icy as soon as their backs were turned. Marcus. He wasn't as funny without the other 2 around. He needed an audience. I watched. I remembered. Every smirk, every insult. Every time someone tripped me in the hallway, snatched a pencil from my desk, or made a joke loud enough for me to hear. I stored it all away. Not in a notebook this time, but in my mind. Scene by scene. Word for word. I don't know when I decided that one day I'd write about it. Back then, I just wanted to survive. But somewhere deep down, I knew that if I ever made it out of that place, out of that feeling, I'd take back the narrative. They thought they were the main characters. They were just the prologue. After high school, I vanished from their radar like I'd never existed. No goodbye posts, no senior trip selfies, no reunions. Just gone. I went to a small state university a few hours away from home. It wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet. And quiet is exactly what I needed. No parties, no drama, no forced small talk, just long library hours, cheap coffee, and piles of books. The kind of place where nobody knew your name unless they saw it on a paper. I spent most of my time writing. At first, I went back to fiction. Short stories, little blog posts, occasional freelance work for online magazines, stories of strange lands and quiet heroes. I wrote about imaginary friendships and redemptive endings, maybe trying to rewrite what I never got in real life. But the past has a strange way of following you around. It crept back in quiet moments, like when I'd hear laughter echoing in a hallway and my stomach would clench, instinctively. Or when I'd walk into a crowded cafeteria and feel like the air got heavier, even though no one knew me here. I'd see people like Jake, Brielle, and Marcus everywhere. Different faces, same smirks. Then, one cold night during sophomore year, I was cleaning out my desk and found it. My old high school yearbook. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe because throwing it out would have felt like letting them win. Maybe because part of me wasn't done with it yet. I flipped through the pages, saw my own stiff smile, saw the notes kids wrote in the margins. Half of them fake nice, half of them just blank spaces where real friendships should have been. And then I saw them. Jake, posing like he owned the place. Brielle, flashing that smile she used to weaponize. Marcus, caught mid-laugh, probably at someone else's expense. That's when it clicked. I had spent years escaping that story, burying it under fiction. But maybe I wasn't supposed to run from it. Maybe I was supposed to write it. Not in metaphors, not behind dragons and aliens, just the truth, raw, unfiltered, and real. So I started. Slowly at first. A paragraph here, a memory there. I was scared, honestly. Revisiting those moments wasn't easy. I had to feel it all again. The humiliation, the silence, the loneliness. But once the words started flowing, it was like opening a dam. I didn't just write what happened, I analyzed it. Picked it apart. I remembered things in sharp detail. What Jake said when he mocked my stories. The look on Brielle's face when she watched me cry and didn't flinch. The way Marcus tripped me in front of the school librarian and said, "Watch your step, wizard." I wrote all of it. I changed nothing. No fake names, no softened edges, no, "this is a work of fiction" disclaimer. This wasn't revenge, it was testimony, and the world needed to hear it. I titled the manuscript, "Hall Pass to Hell." It felt right. It wasn't just about what they did to me. It was about the system that let it happen. The teachers who turned away, the classmates who laughed along, the silence that swallowed everything. It took me 2 years to finish. Not just because of the writing, but because I kept stopping, doubting, asking myself, do I really want to publish this? Will people even care? What if they come after me? But every time I hesitated, I remembered 16-year-old me, sitting behind the gym, eating a sandwich with a bruised ego, wondering why no one cared. So I kept going. When I finally submitted the manuscript to my agent, I didn't expect much. She called me crying 2 days later, said it was the most powerful thing she'd ever read, said it made her angry, then proud, then deeply moved. A few weeks later, a publisher picked it up. They were excited, but cautious. The editor called me and said, "This is incredible, but are you sure you want to keep the real names?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. Silence on the line. Then, okay. From that moment on, I knew there was no turning back. My story was going to be out there. They were going to be out there. No more hiding, no more running. The world would finally hear what happened. The book exploded. I don't mean a modest indie hit or a cult following. I mean viral, national, on fire. The kind of success most writers only dream of, and certainly not on their first raw, gut-wrenching memoir with no filter. Hall Pass to Hell dropped quietly at first, just a few pre-orders, some murmurs in niche book forums. But then, someone on TikTok did a dramatic reading of a paragraph where Marcus humiliated me in the hallway, and it went viral overnight. Millions of views. Comments like, "This reads like my high school trauma." "I swear I knew a Jake too. He used their real names?" By the second week, it hit number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. Third week. A memoir written by a once-forgotten kid who sat alone at lunch. I got interview requests from everywhere. Podcasts, book blogs, YouTube creators who analyzed every chapter like it was a true crime story. One day, I was a nobody with a scarred past and a manuscript. The next, I was sitting across from a talk show host who said, "This book is blowing up because it's not just your story. It's ours, too." The line, based on a true story, practically printed money. But the real story wasn't just in the book. It was in what happened after it came out. Jake was the first to feel the heat. Turns out he'd built a decent life for himself. Corporate job, clean reputation. He had a carefully curated LinkedIn persona with buzzwords like leadership, team synergy, and community growth, until someone from his office connected the dots. Page 46. A scene where he held my notebook above a trash can and made me beg to get it back while laughing with a mouthful of fries. Word spread. Readers Googled him. Screenshots flew across Reddit and Twitter. A few ex-coworkers came forward and said he still made passive-aggressive jokes about weirdos in the office. 2 days later, his employer let him go to protect company values. Then came Brielle. She had rebranded herself as a wellness guru, running her own yoga and lifestyle studio in our hometown. Smooth aesthetic, daily affirmations, love and light in every caption. Until readers found her. Her business's Google reviews dropped from 4.9 to 1.2 stars almost overnight. People left comments quoting lines from my book. "Imagine getting rich off peace when you once fed on cruelty. Namaste, but make it performative." Her Instagram comments were flooded. She deleted dozens of posts. Then her entire account. Then the studio's website vanished. She went private. Vanished. Again. And Marcus? He had pivoted hard after high school, tried to become a motivational speaker. He talked about overcoming your past and channeling your pain. He even published a short ebook about personal growth. But after Hall Pass to Hell dropped, clips of him surfaced from our school yearbook video. Him mocking me. Him faking a limp and calling it the Nerd Walk. He was uninvited from 2 speaking events. A nonprofit that once promoted him posted a formal apology and cut ties. His talent agency dropped him the same week. Then they reached out. All of them. First Jake. He emailed me with a subject line that just read, "From one adult to another." Inside, "Hey man, it's been years. We were kids. I think we've both grown since then. Maybe we could talk? Privately." Then Brielle. "You made your point. I've changed. Please take the book down or at least change the names. I have a daughter now." Finally, Marcus. He skipped the pleasantries and went straight to legal threats. His email was full of bluster. Something about defamation, emotional distress, and unauthorized use of likeness. It was laughable, really. My lawyer replied in one line, "All claims are factually documented and protected under truth-based publishing." I never replied to any of them directly, but on my Instagram, I posted a photo from my first signing event. Me holding up a copy of the book, grinning. The caption, "Sometimes the people who taught you pain become the chapters that teach the world." That was it. The post went viral. Again. Thousands of comments. Messages from people who'd been through the same thing. Teachers, survivors, quiet kids who still sat alone at lunch. One message stuck out to me. It read, "I never thought someone like me could be heard. Your book gave me that hope. Thank you." That's when I realized it wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. The fallout was just a side effect. What mattered was that my story, our stories, were no longer buried under laughter and shame. People were finally listening, and I wasn't hiding behind fantasy anymore. The night of my first major book signing felt surreal. I'd done a few smaller ones, local bookstores, university libraries, cozy little spots with warm lighting and soft jazz playing overhead. But this one was different. It was hosted at a massive independent bookstore downtown, the kind with 2 floors, winding aisles, and shelves so tall you needed a ladder to reach the top. They cleared an entire section just for me, set up rows of chairs, a table with a velvet cloth, and a banner that read, "An evening with the author of Hall Pass to Hell." Hundreds of people showed up. They spilled out of the event area, wrapped around the travel section, standing between cookbooks and biographies just to get a glimpse. I was overwhelmed, in the best way. Faces I didn't know, some I vaguely recognized, all holding copies of my book close to their chests like it meant something to them. And maybe it did. I signed copies for nearly 4 hours. My hand cramped, my voice went hoarse, but I didn't care. Every person who stepped up to the table said something that reminded me why I wrote it. Thank you for telling the story so many of us couldn't. You put into words what I lived through and never spoke about. I wish I had your book when I was 15. They came from everywhere. Teachers, students, survivors of bullying, quiet kids who'd grown into fierce adults. A woman even brought her teenage son and whispered, "He's going through what you went through." But now he knows he's not alone. That moment almost broke me. I held it together, but something in my chest cracked open. Something warm, something healing. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not revenge, not pride, just peace. Then I saw her. She was standing in line near the back holding a copy of my book like everyone else. Hair shorter now, glasses. A little older, like all of us. But I recognized her instantly. Jessica. She sat beside me in sophomore English. She was never cruel, not like Jake or Brielle or Marcus. She never tripped me or stole my notebook. But she laughed when they did. She giggled during cafeteria read-alouds. She looked away when I cried in class and told herself it wasn't her problem. Now, she was waiting in line to see me. As the line inched forward, I kept glancing up, wondering if she'd lose her nerve and leave. She didn't. She held her place, fidgeting with the corner of the book cover, eyes darting around the shelves like she was looking for an escape. Eventually, she stepped up to my table. For a few seconds, she just stared at me. Not in awe, not like a fan, but like someone who didn't know where to begin. "Hey," she said softly. "Hi," I replied, keeping my voice even. She placed the book down in front of me but didn't slide it over, just rested her hands on it. "I read it," she said. "The whole thing. Twice." I nodded slowly, pen still in hand. "I just wanted to say," her voice cracked, "I'm sorry, for laughing, for not doing anything, for pretending it wasn't happening." There was a long pause. Not awkward, just heavy. I nodded again. "You weren't the worst part," I said, "but you were part of it." She looked down, blinking fast. "I know." I could see the guilt written all over her. Maybe she'd carried it for years. Maybe reading my story brought it back up. Either way, she was here now, facing it. She looked up. "You've really changed." I shook my head. "No," I said gently. "I've always been this person. You're just finally reading the story." Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't say anything. Just stood there for a moment, tears welling in her eyes. Then, slowly, she nodded. It wasn't just understanding. It was something deeper. Acceptance, maybe. Or regret. I signed her book, wrote her name carefully. Beneath it, I scribbled, "Every story has bystanders. Not every bystander gets to say sorry." I closed it, handed it back, and offered a small, tired smile. She held it to her chest, like it was heavy. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she stepped aside and the line moved forward. The rest of the night was a blur. More books, more faces, more stories shared over a few seconds of conversation. But Jessica's visit stayed with me. Long after the last signature. Long after the banner came down. Long after the bookstore lights dimmed. Because that's the thing about telling your story truthfully. It doesn't just free you. It forces others to face their own chapters, too.